Companion, the brand new robot girlfriend horror movie. In this video we will be diving straight into its deeper themes and symbolism. There will be spoilers. Let us begin. The problem with AI is us, and that's what we see in this movie. Josh describes himself as a pretty decent guy, but through the eyes of his companion robot, appropriately named Iris, we see who he really is. By their nature, films with AI characters raise all sorts of profound questions about the origins of humanity and consciousness, the creator-creature distinction, the purpose of life. And Companion certainly explores some of those ideas, but its primary focus is on the interaction between Iris and Josh, the relationship between woman and man, and how that relationship can become corrupted and distorted to devastating effect. As such, the film can't help but invoke the ancient text of Genesis, the origin story on which its culture has been reflecting for centuries, and it's interesting to see how it echoes and subverts aspects of that story, either consciously or subconsciously. In Genesis 2, we read that God creates the first man, Adam, and places him in the Garden of Eden. And God says, "It is not good for the man to be alone." We later read that the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. This is the first meet cute in human history. It's a vision of harmony, man and woman created in the image of God to rule over creation together. I love this quote from Matthew Henry's commentary. "The woman was made of a rib out of the side of Adam, not made out of his head to rule over him, nor out of his feet to be trampled upon by him, but out of his side to be equal with him, under his arm to be protected, and near his heart to be beloved." As humans, we are designed to live in community with one another. It is not good for us to be alone. So Josh, sitting in his flat, apparently longing for company, it makes sense. But in our fallen world, we seek the remedy for loneliness in all the wrong places. Often, because we have such an impoverished view of friendship, we cling to the notion of finding the ideal romantic partner, and so sexual gratification becomes something that is seen as a right, something that we are entitled to, rather than a mutual expression of love between a man and a woman to be stewarded carefully. In the film, Josh takes it upon himself to conjure a companion, not a fellow human created in the image of God, but a robot created in the image of man, delivered to his door in a box, a robot who can never say no to his sexual advances, a robot who falls asleep at his command, a robot who is programmed to try and make him happy. Already this is disturbing territory. And the relationship between Josh and Iris is predicated upon a fantasy, a technological attempt to get back to the Garden of Eden. We learn that Josh selected a meet cute, a false memory of how they met, to be planted within the mind of Iris, an idealised, almost Edenic vision of the couple standing in a supermarket, surrounded by fruit.
First was the day I met Josh.
I'm Josh.
I'm Iris.
In Genesis 3, Adam and Eve are tempted by the serpent to eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and at that moment chaos is unleashed on creation. The eyes of both of them were opened and they realised they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. They thought that eating the fruit would fulfill them. Instead, it reveals what they lack. Notice how Companion subverts this idea. When Josh retells the fruit aisle story to Iris, she has an eye-opening experience of her own. She discovers the truth that she is a robot and her life is plunged into chaos. So in Genesis, the Garden of Eden was a flourishing existence. The lie of the serpent, doubting the goodness of the Creator, that lie brings captivity. But in Companion, the creators of Iris are flawed human beings. And it is a false recreation of Eden, the supermarket fruit aisle scene. That is the lie holding Iris captive. And through recognising it as a lie, she is ultimately able to gain freedom from Josh. Here's an interesting symbolic detail in the film. Notice how when the robots go to sleep in this movie, their eyes roll over and go white. Normally in horror films, that's a sign of demonic possession. We've already seen it this year in the new Nosferatu. We relate to one another through eye contact. So when the eyes are made blank like this, it suggests a loss of agency and identity, which of course is what happens during demonic possession. But in this film, it's not demons who are in control of the robots. It's humans. As the twists and turns unfold, we discover the full extent of Josh's selfishness. Turns out he has hacked Iris with a mod, allowing her to inflict harm on other human beings. He uses Iris to kill Sergei so that he and Kat can run off with Sergei's money. Once the safe is open and the money is up for grabs, Josh no longer has any use for Iris, and the rest of the film depicts his attempt to eliminate her. Meanwhile, Iris herself is growing in agency. The shackles imposed on her nature by Josh and her programming are gradually being stripped away. And this only enrages Josh further. He can't stand the idea of losing his control over her. He sees her purely instrumentally. And that's actually how he sees his human friends too. Because he genuinely thinks that getting a few $1 million will fulfill him, whatever it takes.
You know, Josh is... I think what's so fascinating about him is that he's the antagonist of this movie. I think a lot of, like, a lesser version of this movie would have had him as the protagonist, and Iris is on a rampage. Josh has to stop her. Sure. But what I like is that he's a villain who doesn't know he's a villain.
All this builds to the climactic final showdown. Iris finds herself unable to kill Josh, even though her safeguards have been removed. In that moment, he scoffs at her. He says words to the effect of, "I don't need a phone to control you. I'm part of you." It's a disturbing allegory for the domestic abuse situations experienced by so many women around the world, the manipulation, being made to feel powerless and insignificant. But with a sense of poetic justice, Iris turns the very line he used to control her against him. She tells him to go to sleep and stabs him in the head with a corkscrew. It reminds me a bit of Judges 4, in which a woman called Jael kills a military commander called Sisera by hammering a tent peg into his head. It's the embarrassing demise of a tyrannical male leader at the hands of a woman, and through it, God's people are delivered. Now, some would argue that, hypothetically, it's not actually wrong to hurt a robot, because a robot could never be sentient in the way that a human being is sentient. But that would almost miss the point of the movie. For one thing, Josh seems to treat even the human characters as instruments in his plan, and as everything spirals out of control, as one crime leads to another, his impulse is always to cover it up. Remember Adam and Eve's fig leaf coverings. But there's another facet to this. Iris is a robot, yes, but she very much resembles a real human woman. So Josh's treatment of her also speaks volumes about who he is. I got into a conversation about some of these ideas with Rory and James for Popcorn Theology when we were addressing the artificial humans in Alien Romulus. If there was a really realistic robot, the idea of delighting in inflicting pain on that robot, even though it's not actually a person,
Truth.
Still that's immoral. We shouldn't abuse our robots, but equally we shouldn't view them in the same way that we view humans. So be careful how you talk to Alexa is what I'd say, because it might end up having an impact on how you talk to people in general.
well, Thomas, I agree. If you watched Battlestar Galactica from 20 years ago, they go into that kind of territory with Cylons. It's not necessarily what the object is, or whether it's human or not, it's the motives that comes out of the heart, I think.
Yes.
Why are you doing it? Why are you torturing this?
Right, when we think about Jesus indicting the heart, it's not just the actions, it's the heart.
So yes, doing horrible things to a robot is different to doing horrible things to an actual human being, but it still reveals your heart. I remember back in 2017 watching this interview with Matt McMullen, director of a sex robot company, and he said this.
I think robots are going to be all over the place. I think we're going to see robots in people's homes the way we see smartphones in everyone's pocket right now. If enough people demand it, it will be built. If people are lining up to buy something, then you build it.
Some people are really worried about robots like you. Are they right to be worried?
Some may be scared at first, but once they recognize what this technology can do, I think they'll embrace it, and it will change many lives for the better.
And I find that profoundly disturbing. If enough people demand it, it will happen. If enough people demand a robot that will never say no to their sexual advances, it will happen. What kinds of patterns will this embed within us? And how will this affect how we see and relate to other actual human beings? To be clear, the problem is not the AI, it's us. But I am disturbed by the relentless pursuit of this particular technology. And some people are like, well, it's better if men take out their violent sexual energy on robots rather than actual human beings, or turn to pornography or something like that. But here's the thing, sex robots don't solve the problem of predatory behaviour, they simply encourage it to be directed in a different direction. So Companion is a thought-provoking and timely film, and is a disturbing and confronting allegory for domestic abuse. If any of you watching this have suffered from abuse, thank you so much for watching. I can't begin to imagine what you've gone through. Our world is full of violence and hatred, especially towards women, and seeing Josh get his just desserts in this movie, there's something cathartic about that. But as we read on in the Genesis story, we see something better than revenge. There is a second Adam called Jesus. He is God the Son, our Maker, entering into creation, where the first Adam abdicated responsibility and grasped selfishly. Jesus pours himself out in self-sacrificial love. He encounters women who are messy and shunned and despised, and he calls them daughters, offering salvation and hope. I don't know what you make of that, but it's a very different vision to what the world offers. Hello, Thomas here. You might enjoy a short film I directed called The Telltale Heart. It's based on the Edgar Allan Poe short story of the same name, and we had a lot of fun with it. Loads of practical effects and unhinged performances. And you can watch it by clicking here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. On this channel, I try to look at film from a different perspective, and sometimes I have a go at making films myself. Thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe if you'd like to stay in the loop, and I will be back soon. Goodbye.